Welcome to NTD News. I'm Jasmina Davis. Here are today's top stories. President Trump speaking to thousands of supporters in the last of 3 rallies yesterday. He promised recovery from the pandemic, both economically and by the rapid delivery of vaccines. A Senate committee wants to protect local newspapers from tech giants. It just released a report ahead of today's big tech hearings. A state representative tells us why he's voting against the party line in this year's presidential election. Philadelphia was rocked by a second night of looting and violence after the shooting of Walter Wallace. This time, commercial stores were hit the hardest by the looters. The mayor of a Democratic stronghold is throwing his support behind President Trump. The lifelong Democrat said the choice wasn't easy, but he's in favor of Trump's economic policy. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo urges Sri Lanka to stay vigilant on any deals with the Chinese regime, part of a 5-day tour in the region. President Trump warned of bad news coming out today about his political opponent Joe Biden. He spoke to a huge crowd of thousands in Omaha, Nebraska. Many experienced travel disruptions and suffered the cold weather in order to attend.
President Trump visited Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nebraska on Tuesday in the final week run-up to the election. At his final stop in Omaha, he spoke to a crowd of thousands, many who had been waiting in the cold for several hours.
In 2016, Nebraska voted to fire this corrupt political establishment, and you elected an outsider as president who finally put America first.
Despite the cold weather, spirits were high.
And if I don't sound like a typical Washington politician, it's because I'm not a politician.
The president mentioned that some bad news had come out about his Democratic rival. He said he wouldn't tell the crowd, saying they would find out about it Wednesday. He said former Vice President Joe Biden is not a good guy.
By the way, he's not a good guy, just so you understand.
The crowd chanting, "Lock him up," as the president paused his speech. Biden's campaign has been rocked in recent weeks as several media outlets revealed allegations about Hunter Biden, causing ripples of controversy. Some of the allegations implicate Joe Biden himself. Biden has called it a smear campaign. The 2020 presidential campaign has been unlike any other, conducted amid an ongoing pandemic. The CCP virus, originating in Wuhan, China, has infected at least 215 countries and territories around the world.
I will deliver record prosperity, epic job growth, and a safe vaccine that eradicates the virus and quickly ends the pandemic, and we're making that final turn.
The president is campaigning on a promise to bring the return of normal life and a record economic recovery. There are altogether 4 U.S. Phase 3 trials of vaccines currently under the federal government's Operation Warp Speed. The program plans to distribute vaccines immediately upon grant of an emergency use authorization or FDA license and aims to deliver vaccines free of charge.
Presidential candidate Joe Biden is working hard to win over Georgia voters. Yesterday, he made 2 campaign stops in the state. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports from Atlanta.
I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia at Lakewood Amphitheater, where Joe Biden is giving his second campaign speech here in the state of Georgia. Georgia has increasingly become a battleground state this year. Right over here, there's some drive-in people in their cars driving in to hear Biden speak. And back behind me, you see the protesters, the Trump-supporting protesters, right across the street. Now, Atlanta is an area that's generally voted blue in the past, so Biden is working really hard to keep this area blue and with high hopes to flip the whole state of Georgia blue this year. We spoke to some Biden supporters to see why they're backing the Biden-Harris ticket this year.
Well, first thing we got to do is stop the police violence. We got to stop that completely. Where I live currently, I don't see any issues with it right now.
He says although he hasn't faced it personally, others have. Another woman told us about her biggest concern, what she called the mixed messages coming from Trump about the pandemic.
Adjusting to the new normal as well as the economic impacts. I mean, I was laid off as so many other people were. at the beginning of the pandemic. So the economy, COVID, taking it seriously.
Biden touched on those concerns at his first stop in Warm Springs, Georgia.
Well, I'm here to tell you, we can and we will control this virus. As president, I will never wave the white flag of surrender. Just imagine where we'd be today if the president had embraced wearing masks.
Another Biden supporter told us her long-term concerns focus on criminal justice reform and reinstating and expanding regulations. But she added that first things first.
So, unifying the country is really what I'm looking for. Unifying the country, helping us get back on track where...
She says the claim that Biden could turn America towards a socialist, communist country is an irrational fear. But some Trump supporters there disagreed.
No, I think it's a fear well-grounded, and you slip into that stuff without knowing it a lot of times.
Another Trump supporter added she didn't attend to protest, but to show love across the aisle.
I came out here more from a spiritual perspective. Our country needs healing.
A group of young people also joined from across the street, shouting Black Lives Matter slogans as people passed by. With just 1 week before Election Day, it's to be determined whether Biden will reach his goal of winning Georgia. Reporting in Atlanta, Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
First Lady Melania Trump made her first solo appearance of the fall campaign with a stop in southern Pennsylvania. She blasted Joe Biden and the Democrats.
Let us also not forget what the Democrats chose to focus on when COVID-19 first came into our country. While the president was taking decisive action to keep the American people safe, the Democrats were wasting American taxpayer dollars in a sham impeachment.
The president and First Lady campaigned separately Tuesday. President Trump traveled to Michigan while the First Lady spoke in a small community east of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. She said she experienced the effects of the CCP virus not just as a patient, but as a worried mother and wife. She also offered her thoughts and prayers to Americans whose lives have been impacted by the virus. She defended her husband's response to the pandemic and accused Joe Biden of minimal achievements during his decades in politics. Following the death of Walter Wallace on Monday, Philadelphia endured a second night of looting and violence. Many commercial stores there were targeted. NTD's Christina Kim has more on the story.
Looting and violence erupted in Philadelphia for the second night in a row. This after Walter Wallace was fatally shot by police. Rallies started out peacefully, but violence sparked as the night went on. Philadelphia police said up to 1,000 people were involved in looting in areas of Castor and Aramingo. They've yet to give details on the night's arrests and injuries. Commercial stores like Port Richmond's Walmart was one of the hardest hit. Video posted on social media shows crowds of people ransacked the store. Philadelphia's Office of Emergency Management warned residents in 7 of the city's districts to remain indoors, saying these areas are experiencing widespread demonstration that have turned violent with looting. Pennsylvania's National Guard was also mobilized at the order of Governor Tom Wolf. Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany said in a statement on Tuesday that, in America, we resolve conflicts through the courts and the justice system. We can never allow mob rule. She said the Trump administration stands ready to deploy all federal resources to end the riots. Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner said an investigation into Wallace's shooting is underway. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Some Democrats in the Senate are trying to protect local newspapers from tech giants. They say unfair business practices are the main reason local news outlets have declined.
Commerce Committee Ranking Member Senator Maria Cantwell released a report on Tuesday. It says Congress needs to give the Federal Trade Commission new powers to protect local news stations. The report claims online platforms like Google unfairly use content and divert customers away from local news websites while giving little in return. The report says in the past 20 years, newspaper revenue has dropped about 70%. And in the past 15 years, newspapers have had to let go over 60% of their newsroom employees. The report proposes a variety of measures to help revive local papers, including requiring news aggregation platforms to pay local news outlets for their content. According to the Wall Street Journal, Google's spokesperson said the report distorts Google's role in the news ecosystem. Facebook also defended itself against claims in the report. Big tech CEOs from Twitter, Google, and Facebook are testifying today before the Commerce Committee.
We spoke to one Democratic state representative in Georgia who tells us why he's voting to re-elect Trump this year. He says his party has strayed from its traditions and that he didn't leave his party, but his party left him. NTD's Melina Weiskup has the story.
It's not uncommon to find this Georgia state representative at a Trump rally this year. He'll even proudly surf across the crowd without fear for how the media may criticize him. But he tells us there's many reasons why he's voting red this year, at least in the presidential election.
Okay, so when we're talking about how the president, you say, has supported the black communities, you representing a largely populated black community, have you seen any specific changes in those communities you represent?
When I look at historical black colleges, where I am a proud graduate of North Carolina Central University, not only did the previous administration cut the funding, but this administration, Donald Trump, increased the funding by 14% and wrote it into law. That's a big deal. Those college presidents were having to beg year in and year out to get funding in the budget. Those black communities where it's been declared opportunity zone districts, those family members, those neighborhoods are benefiting from what Donald Trump is doing for them.
And on top of that, Jones says the Democratic Party has strayed from its traditional ways and doesn't represent the values he was raised with.
When I look at traditional families now, they're not upholding traditional families. I support whoever you want to support, but that's the bedrock of our community too, traditional families. And then when I look at the First Amendment, where now freedom of expression is in jeopardy, I didn't leave my party left me.
One example he gave was alleged voter suppression, when some Democrats accuse federal-level government officials of trying to keep minority communities from casting ballots. Specifically, where long lines are seen in DeKalb County in Atlanta, a place where he was previously county executive.
The majority of the governing authority there is African American, including the chief executive. The election supervisor is African American. The chairman of the elections board is African American. Now, is that African American suppressing the black vote? And if there are long lines, it's because of poor planning. That's a local issue. That's not voter suppression. Voter suppression is when you have Antifa and Black Lives Matter and those other left groups who are literally intimidating. They're literally intimidating people because who they support or who they don't support. And the liberal media is a part of it. They're shaming people. They make them feel like if you support Donald Trump, then if you're white, you're a racist, and if you're black, you're a sellout. So that's voter suppression through voter intimidation. They're attacking people physically now.
But Jones says he isn't changing parties because he wants to point out what he calls the bigotry going on within the party. And he says he hopes the Democratic Party will soon start to turn around and come back to its founding values. Reporting in Atlanta, Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
This year, hatred and outrage among certain political groups have devolved into incidents of physical violence. More and more have been sparked as the country moves closer to the election. One philosopher says a major cause is something called oikophobia. According to him, the phobia is likely to strengthen even after the election.
Violence has been on the rise in the U.S. and has been since alleged acts of police brutality emerged midsummer. The attacks, burnings, and lootings are said to have been motivated by social outrage, but philosopher Dr. Benedict Beckold said there's something else underneath the surface.
In this particular case, it's also related, I think, to what we call oikophobia, which is the sort of diametrical opposite of xenophobia. That is to say, oikophobia is the hatred or the dislike of one's own civilization, of one's own culture. And history shows that cultured Western societies, as they advance, tend to become more oikophobic. They tend to become more fragmented and splintered and to turn inward.
In major U.S. cities, particularly Portland, Oregon, physical violence and overall civil unrest have grown frequent. Dr. Beckold said oikophobic violence is committed by the left, with the group Antifa leading them.
And to some extent, unlike BLM, Antifa does not seek a redress of particular grievances. I think probably a lot of the BLM's grievances are also misdirected, but Antifa seeks to overthrow the whole system, as far as I can see anyway. And so, no, I don't think there's anything constructive about it, and I think whatever chains they wish to throw off would be replaced by even heavier chains if they were to be successful.
Alongside the oikophobic-driven violence is what Beckold called an anti-oikophobic reaction. In California, there were 110,000 gun sales in the first 5 months of the pandemic. Sources say people bought them out of a concern for lawlessness. Some expect gun sales to increase, as right-wing Americans fear a potential Biden victory will mean a repeal of the Second Amendment. Beckold said this reaction will add fuel to the flame.
So the more oikophobia goes up, the more the reactionaries on the right, the more they rally, if you will, against oikophobia. And so gun sales, when gun sales go up, that's a natural reaction to that. And which, of course, and then the more gun sales go up, excuse me, the more the left will be concerned about America being a gun-obsessed nation, and so that in turn will increase oikophobia, and so they kind of reinforce each other.
But according to Beckold, regardless of who wins the 2020 election, there will be a rise in oikophobia, which will in turn lead to more violence.
I think if Trump wins, that's going to really enrage the oikophobes and almost definitely lead to violence. And if Biden wins, and especially not only if Biden wins, but if the Democrats also take the Senate, if both those things happen, they will probably overreach, as they tend to do, which of course then in turn will lead to a greater reaction.
Officials across the country have taken measures to prevent violence related to the November election. Dr. Beckold said he hopes he's wrong, and that if a third party wins, the country could be in a safer position. Don Tran, NTD News, New York.
Up next, we hear from swing state voters in Pennsylvania. Their votes could decide who wins the 2020 election, and they're well aware of their role. And analysts say presidential candidates have never fought so hard to win the Latino vote. We hear from Latino voters in Virginia when we return. Voters in the swing state of Pennsylvania were talking politics at Philadelphia's Reading Terminal Market this week. The state is crucial for the upcoming election, and voters are well aware of it.
In Pennsylvania, a majority of voters can swing toward either major party. That's why Pennsylvania has been heavily courted with frequent visits by both candidates. And it seems like voters are aware of their role. One voter says he thinks more people will be inspired to vote this year than in past elections.
I think people are more cognizant of what's going on right now. I think more people have an opinion, more people are actually trying to vote, and so I think it's going to be a more representative outcome than it was last time.
One Trump supporter says she thinks Biden puts too much blame on the president for the pandemic.
Nobody was ready for the corona. No more than President Bush was ready when the levee broke in Louisiana. Nobody's ready for this lifestyle change. But if you don't vote for Trump, you're going to be living like this the rest of your life.
A Florida visitor agreed with her.
You can't blame a global pandemic on one person. I mean, it's happening all over the world. People are just pointing the finger at him because they've been pointing the finger at him since day one.
Most people have already decided who they are going to vote for. But one voter says he doesn't like either one of the candidates.
Over 300 million Americans, we get stuck with Biden and Trump. I'm not thrilled with anybody.
President Trump expects to win Pennsylvania by a larger margin than the close victory he achieved in defeating Hillary Clinton in 2016.
Many analysts say they have never seen the Republican and Democrat parties fight this hard to get Latino votes. Then again, 2020 is a race of many firsts.
32 million Hispanic votes are up for grabs this year. They could tilt the election for President Trump or Democratic challenger Joe Biden. The 2020 election could mark the first time that Hispanics will be the largest racial or ethnic minority group in the electorate. They account for just over 13% of eligible voters, slightly more than black voters. Culpeper, Virginia is a melting pot just an hour and a half from Washington, D.C. With Latinos making up at least 20% of its 20,000 population, they know their vote is decisive.
We need to get out and vote. It's so crucial, the young Latino vote, so crucial. We need to show the third generation why the Latino vote is so important.
Another voter agreed, saying there isn't much time left.
Keep voting because you know what is it now? We're down to how many days left? 7, 8 days, you know. We have to go ahead and we have to just, that's the corner that we're going to turn. That's the corner.
Virginia is a competitive state with 13 electoral votes. It leans Democratic. But the enthusiastic Latinos for Trump community in town makes their support widely known.
I agree with everything Donald Trump is doing in America, put America first. I am on board with what he's doing with the border, secured our borders.
He added that he tries to explain, especially to younger Latinos, that there are other options than just Democrats. Other Latinos in the area also support the president for different reasons.
Because Trump is against closing down the country because of COVID, we are small business owners and we don't want to close our businesses. He helps minorities. He is a man who believes in God. He has principles.
Another American, also originally from Peru, shared her reasons why she wants President Trump to stay in office.
I support President Trump because I am against abortion, and also I don't want the United States to become another Venezuela.
Nationally, Biden leads Trump among registered voters who identify as Hispanics. But Biden's 23-point advantage is smaller than the 39-point lead Clinton had over Trump among Hispanic voters on Election Day 4 years ago.
The Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York will soon offer virus testing for its public transit employees. It's an effort to lessen the impacts of a possible second wave in the city.
New York's MTA says it's launching a first-in-the-nation testing program. The initiative is meant to guard against a second wave of the virus among transit workers.
We're proud today to launch a new voluntary COVID screening program for frontline employees, the first program of its kind for transit workers anywhere in the nation.
MTA Chairman Patrick Foy said the goal will be to test 15% of frontline workers weekly. According to the Transport Workers Union Local 100 president, that would amount to roughly 6,000 bus and subway workers.
What we want to do is, if in the unfortunate circumstance there is a second wave in New York, that we're prepared for it and we take every action we can to minimize health risks to our customers and our employees.
Testing will be offered at field sites, including bus depots and train yards. Several health centers will also help test transit workers.
There's no question but that the first wave hit New York and the MTA incredibly hard. And we're taking what we learned from that experience to prepare for the future.
Results will be available for workers within 24 to 48 hours.
We've done tens of thousands of tests for the MTA workforce, and this is just taking it to the next level.
More than 120 MTA employees have died from the pandemic this year.
A Democratic mayor of a small Pennsylvania town is endorsing Trump for president. The decision wasn't easy for him. He says Republicans have cut funding for the city's development, but that he supports Trump because he is a businessman and not a Washington insider. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more from Carbondale.
Carbondale, Pennsylvania has been a Democratic stronghold for decades, owing to the working-class families in the mining, manufacturing, and railroad industries. The city's mayor, Justin Taylor, has been a Democrat his whole life. Growing up, his family owned a home heating oil business. His grandfather wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty and told the young Taylor he'll grow up to be a Democrat just like him. But Taylor says the Democratic Party has changed and it's moving towards socialism. So he's now endorsing Trump in part because he spurred economic growth.
I've seen people, have probably in some cases their first job ever. And they were proud of that. And they were able to enjoy their life more. They had, it might not have been, family sustaining wages, but they had a job, they had a purpose, they had principle, and they were contributing to the community, and they weren't looking for the handout.
Trump's administration slashed corporate tax rates. During the middle of the Obama years, the U.S. had the highest corporate tax rate among G20 nations at about 39%. Now it's nearly half of that at about 21%. Taylor says this allows businesses to reinvest in themselves and hire more workers, an advantage that stems from having a businessman as president.
The entrepreneur, the small business owner, or the large company, I think in our area, has a little bit of a sense of comfort that the leader of the country has seen the struggles that I see as a small business owner.
Taylor says it's important to have a level of comfort knowing the country is heading in the right direction. He cited lockdowns in Pennsylvania as a reason more people may vote Republican for less regulations and a better business environment.
The shockwave of these, again, continued limitations and restrictions on businesses in Pennsylvania is going to be felt for decades. And that's at the hands of a Democratic governor. And that is directly relating and transpiring folks to move forward and to vote for President Trump.
Governor Tom Wolf recently vetoed a bill that would expand the indoor capacity for bars and restaurants. Now, 7,000 of them are expected to close as a result. Meanwhile, President Trump has made it clear he will work to reopen the country. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Coming up, shops along one of China's most prosperous streets are left deserted. It seems to tell a different story about the country's economy than what Beijing's official figures would suggest. And hundreds of thousands of Chinese Communist Party officials are punished this year for corruption. Millions of complaints were filed. That and more when we return. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Sri Lanka as part of a 5-day trip where he will visit multiple countries in the region. He is warning the Sri Lankan government about the dangers of working with the Chinese regime.
We see from bad deals, violations of sovereignty and lawlessness on land and sea that the Chinese Communist Party is a predator. And the United States comes in a different way. We come as a friend and as a partner.
Pompeo is in Sri Lanka to urge the nation to be on guard against predatory lending and investment by the Chinese regime. He's there to build closer ties with the South Asian country. Pompeo told Sri Lanka development and infrastructure deals made with the Chinese Communist regime benefit the regime more than the recipient countries. Pompeo said Sri Lanka could be a beacon for the freedom and democracy in the region as long as it retains its full sovereignty. Pompeo is on a 5-day tour of the region aimed at warning allies about China's increasing political and military inroads in recent years. Now we turn to the economic situation in China. Locals point to scenes on the streets to get a real sense of the country's financial conditions. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on the story.
Now we take a look at shops in China. This video from earlier this week showed Nanjing Road in Shanghai City. This road was one of the most prosperous commercial streets in the whole country. Now many shops there are closed. The words on the video read, "The real economy on Nanjing Road is about to collapse, and everything has already begun." Big footwear wholesale markets in Shanghai remain closed. The most famous one among them, Damingshu City, did not close during the epidemic, but had already closed last year to a poor financial performance. The epidemic led to more footwear markets in the area to close. This video was taken earlier this month. Another video taken around the same time in another economically developed city, Shenzhen in South China, shows a shopping center that is almost empty. Now we take a look into one of China's most important economic centers, the Pearl River Delta. Nearly 70% of companies there are reportedly considering a big change, moving at least part of their production capacity out of China. About 2/3 of them say they are motivated by the impacts of the pandemic, while 1/3 attributes the possible relocation to other reasons. Most of the companies say they'd prefer to keep part of their factory operations in China. That's because they aim for a decentralized supply chain model. The Pearl River Delta is located in southern China in the economic powerhouse of Guangdong Province. Known as a mega city, it produces 80% of Guangdong's total economic output. Nearby Dongguan City has been dubbed the world's factory, with manufacturers there producing for companies across the globe. Now we look to corruption in China. During the first 3 quarters of this year, nearly 400,000 Chinese Communist Party officials were punished for corruption and other disciplinary violations. This, according to a report issued over the weekend by China's Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. From January to September, the inspection department received over 2 million complaints and reports of corruption by CCP officials from across the country. More than 440,000 have been investigated by authorities. In the end, 390,000 officials were punished. The highest-ranking official among them is the Deputy Director of China's National Energy Administration.
An online petition calling for an end to the CCP has earned over 160,000 signatures in a few short months, and it's gaining recognition from a lawmaker in the U.S.
A petition calling for an end to the Chinese Communist Party has gained over 160,000 signatures since June. It was created by Chinese Americans, some of whom experienced the CCP's authoritarian regime firsthand. The petition's website details a brief history of the CCP's suppression of the Chinese people, including the one-child policy, the 1989 massacre of students at Tiananmen Square, the suppression of Hong Kongers, and the cover-up of the CCP virus. The petition is inspired by the book 9 Commentaries on the Chinese Communist Party. This book centers around taking a deep examination of the CCP's history, published by NTD's sister media, the Epoch Times. Within the U.S., the End CCP petition is gaining recognition. Congressman Scott Perry believes it sends a great message. He says the CCP will not willingly stand down, that they must be forced out.
Look, I think that's a great message, but I don't think the Communist Party of China is just going to fold up and walk away willingly. It's a criminal organization that has taken control of a country. They're not going to leave of their own accord. They're going to have to be forced out of authority and out of power, one way or the other.
Perry recently introduced a bill to designate the CCP as a transnational criminal organization. Wang Qing, a mainland Chinese citizen living in the United States, told us that the CCP's influence can even be seen in the U.S.
Not to mention in China, even the Chinese who have fled overseas, like me, don't have freedom of speech. If I say something on Twitter, the party will hunt my family down.
The petition vows to raise awareness of this issue with governmental officials and other organizations to get more voices heard, 161,051 voices and counting.
Hong Kong bar Club 71 is known as a gathering place for pro-democracy activists and intellectuals, but it's closing at the end of this month due to the impact of the pandemic.
Months of government-mandated bar closures and the rents have made Club 71 financially unable to continue running the bar. Nearly 15 years ago, owner Grace Ma decided to name her bar Club 71 in commemoration of a July 1, 2003 rally. Hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers protested a proposed national security law for the semi-autonomous Hong Kong city.
I took the name as 71 because somehow it's more hopeful with half a million Hong Kong people having a demonstration, a rally to stand for themselves.
Social distancing restrictions have halved the capacity of the city's bars and restaurants, making it more difficult for them to turn a profit. One of Club 71's customers is former lawmaker and pro-democracy activist Leung Kwok Hung, known as Long Hair in Hong Kong.
It is a hub for everyone to connect and communicate with each other, sometimes sit around and discuss what to do. So you can say it's a meeting point.
Fiona Ho has been a loyal customer for decades. She works in sales and marketing.
I think the displays and decorations or its interior design in the bar reflect a lot on different social issues and other topics.
Other famous bar-goers over the years have included Hong Kong singer Denise Ho, who is known for her pro-democracy stance, as well as acclaimed filmmaker Christopher Doyle. The end of the venue also comes as Hong Kong faces unprecedented changes under a new national security law imposed by Beijing in June.
Coming up, Facebook tries to stop a university from tracking political advertising on its platform. It's threatened action if the college doesn't cancel the project. And are you concerned about how you're getting to the polls next week? Well, not a worry. A car rental company is offering to help get you there, free of charge. That and more after the break. U.S. Postal Service is commemorating Red Ribbon Week, the nation's oldest and largest drug abuse prevention awareness program. The agency is marking the week with a new stamp. A dedication ceremony was held Tuesday at Drug Enforcement Administration headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. The DEA acting administrator, the Postmaster General, and Miss America 2020 Camille Schreier were all there. The stamp features a white star with lines of red and blue radiating from the star. Designer Greg Breeding says it suggests the unity needed at all levels to effectively address drug abuse. The drug-free stamp is on sale now at post office locations nationwide and online. HERTZ wants to help you get to the polls this election season. The rental car company says on November 2nd or 3rd, it will give away one free day where customers reserve a car for 2 days. HERTZ says this will make it easier for people to perform their civic duty. The promotion is available at HERTZ neighborhood locations across the country. Other transportation companies are also running deals on Election Day. Both Uber and Lyft are offering discounted rides to the polls. Facebook is threatening to take action against a New York University project called Ad Observer. The project was launched to track types of political advertisements. Facebook says the university is not allowed to do that.
A Facebook executive sent a letter on October 16th to NYU researchers saying they must delete data they have taken from Facebook's platform. NYU created a browser plugin that anyone can download from adobserver.org and use. By consenting to use the app, you share information about the political adverts the user is shown when they're on Facebook. Facebook says if NYU refuses to delete the data and close down the project, they will take additional enforcement action. This includes changing Facebook's code to prevent NYU's plugin from working. The project has already distributed the plugin to 6,500 volunteers. NYU lawyer Ramsha Krishnan said they are trying to shut down a tool critical for exposing disinformation in this election, which is alarming. She said the public has a right to know how they are being targeted for political ads. Facebook says that it won't take any further action against the project until well after the election is over.
Trader Joe's is recalling fish that could cause problems for people with certain allergies after more than 350 cases of packaged fish were mislabeled. The packages are for gluten-free battered halibut. They fail to list their milk or wheat ingredients as allergens. These ingredients could cause life-threatening responses in people with severe allergies to them. No illnesses from consuming the product have been reported. The fish is packaged by Seattle-based Orca Bay, but branded as Trader Joe's and sold in the grocery chain stores. Customers who bought the fish may return it to TJ's for a full refund. And up next, in order to fight record numbers of infections, the French government is considering a new lockdown on top of the existing curfew. And Finland's national carrier FINNAIR is selling airline meals to prevent job cuts. And it looks like the Nordic Japanese-inspired flavors are a hit. That and more when we return. Over to Europe, France is facing record numbers of new infections and hospitalizations. Some doctors recommend a new lockdown, but reactions are mixed. NTD UK's Neil Woodrow will bring us more news from Europe.
Thanks. Welcome to our UK newsroom with UK and European news. French authorities are looking at options for even tighter measures to fight COVID-19, including a new lockdown.
France has seen record numbers of infections in recent days. On Monday, the country registered its biggest one-day increase in hospitalizations in more than 6 months.
We must expect difficult decisions. I don't know what they'll be exactly, but it's like all our neighbours.
Some doctors recommend another lockdown, saying the economy can be fixed, but botched intensive care can't. Some ICU doctors at hospitals are feeling the pressure.
We are trying to keep a non-COVID service open in ICU, and our colleagues are trying to do the same thing, and that's harder.
But for citizens, the attitude to a new lockdown is mixed.
We don't know where we're going. The doctors and scientists never agree. They don't agree, so we're a bit lost.
I'm a student here in Paris, so it's gonna be difficult for me to make money. But on the other hand, I see that's what's needed, because the situation is really bad right now.
France has already set a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. in major cities, including Paris. Some sources say officials are considering starting curfew earlier, confining people to their homes at weekends except for essential trips, and closing non-essential shops.
Protests erupted across Italy against a new round of government restrictions. At least two major northern cities, Milan and Turin, saw violence after some demonstrations on Monday night. A number of luxury stores, including a Gucci store, were looted in Turin. Crowds of youths took to the streets, letting off firecrackers and lighting coloured flares. Police responded with volleys of tear gas. There were also clashes in Milan, whose surrounding areas were hit hard in the early stages of the pandemic. The Italian government has ordered night curfews, with bars and restaurants ordered to close by 6 p.m. Business owners fear bankruptcy despite the government's promise of support. Eurozone banks are tightening access to corporate credit amid a resurgence of COVID cases. A European Central Bank or ECB survey of 143 large banks show concerns of deterioration for the general economic outlook and increased credit risk of borrowers. Tighter credit supply could block growth, forcing some companies into insolvency. The ECB supports banks by currently lending at -1%. Most foresee the ECB expanding its stimulus measures in December. An Armenian diamond-cutting factory takes in nearly 200 war refugees, putting profit aside.
56-year-old Anna Ossipian and her two grandchildren, with nearly 200 others, many of them children, are living in a makeshift camp at ADM Diamonds. Her son and grandson are left behind fighting.
It's our third war, as we see. We got used to it.
At the ADM Diamonds factory, 12 miles from the Armenian capital, desks where precious stones are cut are replaced with dozens of makeshift beds.
We were well received, thank God. There were many people who lent a helping hand to us.
ADM Diamonds even postponed an expansion into other stones to make room for the refugees.
When there is a war, we can't talk about profits. The most important thing is for the country to win.
Diamond cutting is a major industry in Armenia. ADM generates about $35 to $40 million in annual sales and is the largest in the country.
We have social obligations that we believe any businessman should have.
Armenians regard Nagorno-Karabakh as part of their historic homeland, while Azeri consider the region to be illegally occupied land that must be returned to their control. Since conflict began in late September, hundreds have been killed and clashes have blown through 3 ceasefires.
Finland's national carrier FINNAIR is selling business-class-inspired ready meals to prevent job cuts.
The airplane meals have quickly turned into a hit, with 1,600 meals sold within days at the supermarket located near FINNAIR's main hub. FINNAIR had said it would cut around 700 of its 7,000 staff by March 2021.
There are redundancies and layoffs ongoing already at FINNAIR, and we are trying our best to find new innovative ways.
FINNAIR Kitchen's main first courses on the ground cost around $15 a piece and include dishes like teriyaki beef, Arctic char and reindeer meatballs.
Also, everything is handmade. We don't have any robot or that kind of thing. So I can call we are like a premium brand. We have like really nice local meats and fish, and not like processed things.
The Taste of FINNAIR is piloting at K City Market in Tamisto and hopes to roll out to other venues by demand.
And 33 French sailors are gearing up their minds and bodies for the 9th Vendée Globe solo sailing race.
At over 26,000 miles, it's the longest competition in the world, and they're on their own. No assistance is allowed. The competitors are training hard for the circumnavigation event that's held every 4 years. Of 167 previous contenders since 1989, Only 89 have completed it.
From the moment you jump over the departure line, there is no break day or night. There is no weekend, no break until you reach the finish line. The boat continues to move even when we sleep or when we eat.
With the latest generation of foils, they're hoping to beat the previous record of 74 days. But with greater speed comes greater stress.
Mental endurance is very important, especially this year with the new boats that are more high performance than the previous generation.
This year, 33 skippers qualify for the lineup. They will start racing on November the 8th from Les Sables d'Olonne, a seaside town in western France.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Back over to New York.
Coming up, a luxury hotel and an aquarium in Taiwan have teamed up to give guests a unique experience. Visitors can even enjoy the variety of sea life from their rooms. That and more after the break. A hotel and an aquarium in Taiwan have teamed up to give a life experience.
As penguins swim through these tunnels, diners in the cafe below can watch their antics. Sharks and colorful fish in the main tank catch the attention of visitors. X-Park Aquarium shares the same infrastructure as Cozy Blue Luxury Hotel next door. A night at the hotel includes access to X-Park.
Our hotel was designed following the ideas of the French novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Therefore, we can see marine navigation-themed elements, such as the jellyfish-shaped and shell-shaped lamps. Apart from that, when we walk into a bedroom, we see a display of paintings on the wall that suggest views from a submarine porthole.
There's even the opportunity to see the aquarium without leaving the room. One channel on the TV provides a real-time view of the main tank.
We can see that every corner of the hotel is decorated with marine-related elements. Each of our bedrooms is equipped with a 65-inch TV screen showing us real-time images from inside a fish tank. Such as here, we see sharks and manta rays swimming smoothly.
Staff dive in to maintain the aquarium, and shoals of fish swim past the camera. One of the main attractions is the penguins. Visitors can watch them swim in their tanks. They vanish down one hole only to emerge from another. The aquarium has also installed a system of transparent tunnels that run through the cafe. The birds can swim and play in them while diners watch below. The park hopes these tunnels will be a new way to learn about penguins.
And that's all for now. Catch us again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Jasmina Davis.